the name of Tunette Powell wrote a piece in the Washington Post about how her two sons collectively have been suspended 8 times. Now, keep in mind that her sons are 3 and 4 years old, Joa and JJ. Here's what she had to write about it. Joa had hit a staff member on the arm. After that incident, they deemed him a danger to the staff. Joa was suspended a total of 5 times. In 2014, my children have received 8 suspensions. Now, keep in mind that Joa is only 3 years old and JJ is 4 years old. They're literally in preschool, and while what they did was wrong, they've already been suspended so many times, and she sees this as a really big problem. Now, she gets together with a lot of the parents that also take their children to that preschool, and she noticed something really interesting. She noticed that the parents who have white kids don't really experience the same type of treatment when it comes to the suspensions. Black children represent 18% of preschool enrollment, but make up 48% of preschool children receiving more than 1 out-of-school suspension, and that's according to a study released by the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights in March.
So let's stop right there, because that's a stunning fact, right? Now, a lot of times, people who are more inclined towards believing it's black people's fault will take a look at crime figures and go, you see that? Well, they get arrested more. That's because they're more likely to be criminal. They're more likely to be violent, et cetera. Now, this is a great example because it's 3-year-olds. Nobody's more likely to do anything, right? And so it's not like 3-year-old black kids. I mean, you'd have to be a real dyed-in-the-wool racist to think that 3-year-old black kids are more violent than 3-year-old white kids or Asian kids. They're all kids. They haven't even learned anything yet, right? We haven't been able to socialize them to eat their food right, let alone socializing them in a positive way or in a negative way, in a significant way. Anybody who's had a 3-year-old knows how hard it is to control them, right? So it's normal. It's normal. But what do you have? You have black kids being punished in a massively disproportionate way because of stereotypes that's in the heads of the people who are punishing them. Right. It's not the kids, it's the assumptions about the kids from the adults. I think it's devastating.
Yeah, and it's more a subconscious thing than anything. I don't think that anyone is being like overtly racist in this case. Sure, there might be some isolated incidents, but you kind of have to step back and think about the stereotypes and the perceptions that you have about certain groups of people. And I think that Tunette Powell did a really good job in clarifying that in her piece, which you guys should check out in the Washington Post. But another thing that I would say is, you know, the ACLU has been on this topic for a number of years now, and it's the issue of the school to prison pipeline. I don't care what the race of the child is, right? When they're in preschool, when you're dealing with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, you shouldn't deal with it by just suspending them. They're children. They don't understand what they're doing. You're supposed to use that as a teachable moment. By handling it, by kicking them out of school for a few days, you're not really accomplishing much. And I get it. Teachers have a really difficult job because they're dealing with all these kids. They're underpaid. And so keeping control of all of them can be very, very difficult. But we have these knee-jerk reactions where we think it's better to either throw them out of school for a number of days or kick them out of the school entirely. And with the school to prison pipeline, now all of a sudden we're actually criminalizing rambunctious behavior and putting them in juvenile detention centers.
So now, if you think that it's the subtle discrimination that we're not even aware of, or as Anna's point, I don't think it's malicious, is a factor. Get a load of a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. They asked mostly white female undergrads to judge kids and their actions. And they had black kids, Latino kids, white kids, okay? The black kids, on average, were judged to be older and less innocent than the white kids and the Latino kids. And they're just showing photos here, and they consider them to be more culpable for their actions, okay? And here's another stunner. On average, they thought the black kids were 4.5 years older than they actually were. Because why? Because the older you are, the more culpable you are, right? The more like, oh, he did it on purpose. So it makes your discrimination, it rationalizes your discrimination. Well, I mean, it's not a 3-year-old, it's a 7.5-year-old. So he knew what he was doing. See, he's more violent, right? Or he takes more physical action, etc. So, I mean, look, and then when people say, no, there's no racism in the country, it doesn't mean you can't get beyond it, right? The person writing the piece is very successful. She got beyond it, even though she dealt with similar issues, she says, in preschool against her, right? but it creates this huge hole that you're in from preschool, from when you're 3. And what you do is you internalize it. She made another great point in the piece. She's like, I thought I was the bad guy. I internalized it, and I was like, what's wrong with me? And that's something else you've got to conquer to get to an even playing field.
Yeah, it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy for some kids, right? And it takes a really long time for them to kind of get over that. If you are growing with adults around you constantly telling you that you're bad, you do start internalizing and you start believing it. And that was something that the writer had to overcome in order to become successful in her own life.
My son got suspended like 6 times in preschool.
Really?
Yeah.
But you're white. No, just
He must have been really bad.
Well, I mean, look, because if a kid bites another kid and he's hitting adults and stuff, I mean, I've been thrown off a plane with a 3.5-year-old because he was saying the plane is going to crash, and he was screaming it like before takeoff, and they're like, get off the plane.
He's 3.5.
Doesn't matter.
But maybe he
they threw me
knows
off
something.
The plane.
He looked out the window, saw a gremlin.
Well, what he said was the plane was going to hit the sun and melt. So he didn't know that much.
Right.
Close call.
Have they ever had a 3.5-year-old? Of course he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's 3.5. So there's 2 issues here that Anna alluded to and Wes is building on here, right? One is the issue of discrimination, and I think that's really interesting. The other is the over-criminalizing of kids, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe it's me. I don't know any 3-year-olds who don't throw a temper tantrum at some point. Yeah. My 3-year-old's super common. Every once in a while, he'll get mad because he's 3. Yeah. And, Bob, I don't do that. And boom, he hits you, right? I'm not going to suspend them from my house.
They have to overreach and overreact, and then they learn based on how you treat them in response to that.
Right.
And also, really fast, the only point I really want to make about this is that we talk about racism constantly on this program, and all too often the stories that we have, that the media talks about, that we respond to, are like old, like dyed-in-the-wool, as you would say, conservatives, sort of explicit racism and stuff like that. In the teachers, especially like preschool and elementary school teachers, and the young college females in the study that you cited, neither of those demographically are likely to be incredibly conservative groups. A lot of them probably libs who are just as susceptible to these sorts of implicit subconscious forms of racism that they don't know that they still harbor. So even libs watching this program should be on the lookout for ways that they judge other groups that they don't even know that they're doing.
Everybody does it.
Everyone.
I do
Absolutely.
it. Everyone does.
Yeah, of course.
Try not to.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. No, with the obvious exception of me. But other than
you.
other than
you.
everyone else does.
Everyone else.
Right.